Hey everyone, welcome back to Scanline City. Today we are going to build a Moss Classic from scratch. The Moss Classic is made specifically for American style parts. It includes 8 face buttons, an American bat top joystick mount, and 6 buttons on the back side along with a Nutric port. Now let's go over what you're going to need to build this stick from scratch, assuming you've already purchased your Moss case from ScanlineCity.com. First, you're going to need an American bat top joystick. Nowadays, your best bet is to go with one from IL or HAP. And maybe if you're lucky enough, you find one of those Perfect 360 optical joysticks. Next, you're going to need your buttons. 8 for the front and 6 for the back, 14 in total. These typically always come with the screw-on backs. You will need those. You're also going to need switches for each one of these buttons. Typically, they give you an option to order these along with your buttons. Now you're going to need a PCB. 2 of my favorite are the Brook Universal Fight Board and the Brook Retro Board. Be sure to pick up some adhesive PCB feet if your PCB doesn't already come with it. Now, depending on what PCB you choose, you will need either a USB Nutric or an RJ45 Nutric. The Universal Fight Board uses a USB one, and the Retro Board uses an RJ45 one. Whichever you choose, you're also going to need a USB extension cable or an RJ45 extension cable to connect your PCB to the Nutric. Next, we're going to need some wiring. To make your life easier, you're going to want to get a 20-pin harness specifically for the .187 American button type. This is different than the Japanese .110. You're also going to need a 5-pin American .187 breakout or conversion cable for your joystick. That all takes care of all of your buttons and your joystick, but you still have 3 remaining buttons left over, assuming you want to connect them up. And for that, you're going to want the accessory button harness for the Brook boards. The only problem with this harness is it's only available in .110. So you're going to need some adapters to make them fit American buttons. You're going to need 6 adapters, 3 for the signal, 3 for the ground, and it's basically converting it from .110 to .187. You can also choose to just snip the ends of the wires and attach your own .187 quick disconnects for a much more clean look. I am looking into getting these harnesses made for .187 by the way. Now when you purchase your case, you are going to get a few things included. You're going to get 2 centering button plates. You're also going to get some joystick carriage bolts along with the nuts, and lastly some rubber feet with screws for the bottom plate. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start by removing the 4 screws on the back plate. Now that that's done, we can go ahead and place all of our face buttons. Once those are in place, you want to just hold them down and flip over the stick, being careful not to let them fall out. Now we can screw on the nut backings for each button, but don't tighten them yet. At this stage, we can go ahead and roughly adjust our button directions. I like to have the switches pointing down and to the left personally, and to do that, you want the highest side of the button pointing up to the right and the lowest side pointing down to the left. Now we can connect our switches. To do this, you want to make sure that the button on the switch itself is facing down towards the stick so that it can be activated. You're going to tilt it forward, place that first hole into the notch, then rock that backside down into the button and connect the back hole. Once those are all in place, you can use the leverage of the switches themselves to help tighten the button nuts. Now make sure you adjust all of these buttons and switches so that you have nice clean lanes and connect into the switches. Okay, now we can connect our backside buttons. Now don't forget to place your plexi cutouts into the notches before you connect your buttons. Now go ahead and put on the nut backings. I personally like to have the switches pointing up and out. So the left 3 are going to point up and to the left, and the right 3 are going to point up and to the right. Okay, now it's time for the joystick. Go ahead and place the carriage bolts in the 4 holes. Now just take the backside of a screwdriver and lightly tap them into place until they're flush. Now we can flip the stick back over and the bolts won't fall out. We need to remove the E-clip from the back side of the shaft on your joystick so that we can slide the shaft out. Now take the joystick base and place it inside the joystick notched out area over the screws. Now we simply screw on the nuts. This is a lot easier to do if you have a small socket head with an extension, but you can use a wrench or even some pliers if you'd like. Just don't over tighten it. Once that's done, you can place the shaft back into the stick and reconnect the E-clip by pressing down on the spring. Okay, now let's mount the Neutrik port. Whether it's an RJ45 or USB version, it's pretty much the same process. Place your rubber barrier first, followed by the Neutrik itself. You want to have the USB A side facing out. Now, Neutriks can either come with bolts and nuts, or sometimes just with screws that would go directly into wood. In this case, I have bolts and nuts, so I'm just going to use some needle nose pliers to hold down the bolt and screw it in. Okay, now it's time for the wiring. We're going to start with our .187 20-pin harness. Now you'll notice that there are different lengths on these connection points, and that coordinates basically to your 1 kick, 2 kick, 3 kick, 1 punch, 2 punch, 3 punch, and so on. But I'll also include this diagram here that shows you what color wire coordinates to which button. I like to start with all of these signal connections first, which are going to end up being the center connection point on all of your switches. I then follow that up with the ground connections on the daisy chain. The ground is the shorter offset connection on your switches. Now for the joystick, you're going to need that 5-pin .187 breakout conversion harness. Down is red, orange is up, right is green, and left is yellow. You can also refer back to the 20-pin harness for confirmation. Now we need to connect our remaining 3 buttons using our accessory button harness. And like I said, unfortunately, we need to attach a .110 to .187 adapter on the end of each of these wires. The accessory button harness typically coordinates to your L3, R3, and touchpad, or in a different slot, it's your turbo and turbo light. You could also use 2 of these harnesses if you want to, say, combine a turbo with maybe a touchpad or whatever. All right, now we can bring in our PCB. I'm going to attach my 20-pin harness and my accessory harness. I'm going to attach my adhesive PCB feet. For me, I like to attach the PCB far away from the bottom plate with the USB pointing out to the right. Once that's stuck on there, we can attach the cable going from our Neutrik to our PCB. For me, I like to wrap it around the joystick underneath, but it's up to you. Once all of that wiring is cleaned up to your satisfaction, all that's left to do is to screw on the back plate. And once again, don't over tighten these bolts. A good rule that I like to follow is put the screw in, reverse it until it clicks, and then slowly start to tighten so that you make sure not to cross thread. And that's everything, guys. Your MOS stick is ready to play. I hope this inspires you to build your own stick. We will start selling complete built sticks with the wiring and PCBs and all that kind of stuff done for you, starting in the beginning of August. I have more content coming soon. I'll see you next time.